Oh, there's an audio prompt today. That's a new feature. Well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. For those of you sort of in the sort of European time zones, welcome to our weekly call. Our main focus for this week, we're going to be talking about the KINDNS program, which is an initiative coming out of ICANN, although Adiel will explain a bit more about its background and purpose momentarily. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll touch on a few other points, sort of various topical things through this week, and then pick up on any other business that anyone wishes to raise. But let's kick off then by talking about KINDNS. So Adiel Akplogan has kindly joined us today. He's the sort of VP of Tech Engagement at ICANN, as well as being a sort of a key person behind this initiative. So I can see Adiel is on the call. You should be able to, if you wish to, Adiel, share your screen if you want to display any slides, and you should be able to unmute yourself at your end. So yeah, your slides are on the screen, so that's always reassuring that worked first time. So what we'll do as always is so let you run through your material. If anyone's got any questions, if you could raise your hand, if possible, using the Zoom virtual hand. If not, put a comment in the chat. And then as Adiel's finished his run through, then we'll sort of move to questions and have a discussion about the program. So without further ado, Adiel, I'll hand over to you, and thank you for coming on the call today.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you all for giving me this opportunity to talk briefly about KINDNS. This is a new initiative from ICANN, and in fact, it's emanated from ICANN new strategic plan, which has in several places the need to increase awareness around security best practices and security practices in general when it comes to the DNS. We have a team of technical engagement specialists around the world that has been engaging with different DNS operators. And one of the feedback, or one of the observations that we have made is that although people run the DNS, either because they have a domain name, so they're authoritative, or they make it run by a third party, or they run resolver, in many cases they kind of get lost in following everything that is happening in the field, being up to date with new extension, new security threat that need to be patched, etc., etc. And this especially for small operators or company that don't have enough resources to dedicate people to that. So that's the genesis of the initiative. It's not surprising if we know how, and most of you on the call know very well that the DNS originally was designed as a very simple protocol to translate IP addresses, name to IP addresses, to allow the internet to work, making it easy for people to access the internet, and so on. So the simplicity has been, at the core of the design of the DNS. But very quickly, because of the centrality of that protocol, it became clear that that simplicity good, but it kind of overlooks some of the security aspects, some of other aspect that makes it more effective. So as the time goes by, the DNS has extended on different way, both on the on all the four aspects of it: the protocol, the namespace, the the service, and the provisioning. So those evolution, although they strengthen the core of the DNS, they make it more secure probably, but according to the DNS Camel project that you may all have heard about, there are more than 2,000 pages that talk about the DNS, explain different aspects of the evolution of the DNS, and more than 297, almost 300 RFCs to read to understand the whole DNS. So it can be scary. It can be difficult for somebody that is looking at getting to the bottom of what exactly I need to run this. And within the evolution we are talking about, of course, we have the DNSSEC, we have the new error types that has been added since the beginning, different privacy mechanism that has been added, DOH, DOT, QNAME minimization, and so. It's not easy, and as I mentioned originally, the challenge is for everyone to be able to, at least everyone that run any component of the DNS, to be able to follow all those things, to understand exactly what they need to do to run secure instances of the service that they provide. Generally, and what we have noticed as well, engineers that have responsibility of running DNS, they want to run an effective service. They want to do the right thing. They want to be able to provide a reliable service to their customer. But at some point of time, especially for small organizations, they get overwhelmed with many of the things that they are doing. So the DNS is kind of relegated as the service that is running. Okay, it's fine. Everybody can, surf the web, access to their services. So it works. So let just leave it there in the corner and take care of other things. Which is a challenge, because if we want to secure a so distributed service, we need to make sure that even the small one, the weakest link, are taken care of. It's probably not the challenge for big operator, large operator, because they have dedicated person, dedicated team that follow this day to day, and it's part of their bottom line. So they obviously dedicate resources to that, which is not the case for the vast, unfortunately, majority of DNS instances or services that are run across the world. So how do we help those small ISP, those small DNS operators to keep up with the evolution? I'm
not sure if you're advancing your slides, but I don't see any slides moving along.
Oh boy, sorry for that. It's advancing my side, but there's something.
I just,
We're still on the title slide.
Okay.
I would suggest you unshare it and then reshare it again.
Okay, let me try that. Oh, but I was on slide 4 actually.
Sometimes if you're doing a presentation mode, you might be sharing the wrong screen, Adiel.
Oh yeah, okay. Let me look into this.
Just while Adiel's working on that, you'll see I've put a link in the chat to the background.
Okay.
On KINDNS.
I'm back. I think there is something with my my PowerPoint. In fact, so because Friday I had the same issue, so I have to convert it into PDF. So I have going to share a PDF version, and hopefully it will work better. I need to investigate why I'm having this issue. Is it moving now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry for that. Okay. So I will just straight go to where I was when this so I was talking about the challenge in general. So how the small ISP keep up with the evolution, and how medium enterprise ensure that they are following all the elements in different guideline, and they have a quick reference to run a DNS that is up to the expectation in terms of security, in terms of resiliency, and so on.
Adiel, it's still on the title slide on my screen.
You really?
Is that true of everybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you first put it on, you advanced the slides, but they went back to the start again.
Well. Okay, let me just. What are you seeing?
That's showing the right. Oh, yes.
Well, it's flicking around.
Yeah.
It's on slide 2 at the moment. 3.
3.
Yeah.
4.
4. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'm not touching anything anymore. Let's go with that. This is very strange. Okay, so I was on this slide explaining the challenges that we're trying to address. How the community in general of network operator know if what they should implement, if they should implement the NSX, the validation, how validation up, what are the constraints or what are the considerations to take when doing that. If you are running DNS within a corporate organization without having the DNS as the core of your business, how do you make sure that you have the right setup? How do you choose the provider, knowing exactly what you want? So those general questions, when you are in the field, you are very familiar with them, but if it is not your core expertise, it's not easy to do. So that's where we came up with this initiative, KINDNS, which is for knowledge sharing and instantiation norm for DNS and naming security. The idea is to try to instantiate those knowledge and those best practices. There are many of them out there. There are many references out there to try to summarize them, to consolidate them in a single place where people can access them. So the idea, I will say upfront, not play a little bit into the manners. You know manners, right? The initiative that ISOC run for routing security best practices. So we thought it may be a good idea to have something similar for the DNS as well, because both routing and DNS complement themselves when we're talking about secure operation of the internet. So we came up with that acronym that reflect on kindness, being kind and do the right thing for everyone to take advantage of it. So the overall goal is to produce something very simple, and we very focus on the simplicity side. We want to do something that people can easily refer to, no matter if you are running a very big elaborated network, or you are running a very small network with a DNS instance that you want to run for yourself. And if you want to follow the evolution of the DNS protocol, you can have a reference to the most critical, the most important that are relevant for your case. Of course, we won't be able to cover all the possible case of network infrastructure or network service, but try to focus and address the most common thing that we see. So the simplicity is key here. We discussing this with many people. People always come up and say, "Oh, the DNS is complex. There are so much, nuances. There are so much things." Yes, that is true, but we cannot cover all the corner cases. So we want to focus on the general thing so that anyone can do it. And corner cases will be addressed on case-by-case basis. And as the project and the initiative evolve, we may have more and more best practices guideline for some corner cases. So the slide is still moving, just to make sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, good. So some of the elements that we are looking at during this first phase is to kind of build a soft consensus on the most critical security norms that we want to highlight. That means talking about those we have identified with the community, with people who are active operating DNS, either authoritative, recursive, or other, and kind of get an agreement on, we agree this is important, and make sure that we don't get too much into the corner cases. That will be followed by a very dedicated communication, promotion, and enrollment plan. I will explain that we plan to launch a website dedicated to that, separate from the ICANN website, of course, because we want to build around this a community of actual DNS operators who can, have straight access to the information they need. The enrollment is mainly to encourage people to join that initiative by, leading this by example. Starting with more visible and prominent operators, either those who provide third-party authoritative service or those who are running a resolver service open for the public. Getting them around and building a kind of community around that will be part of this, and the website will have different category of way to join, and each category will have the best practices that are linked to them. So it will be a voluntary commitment by those who want to join the initiative. Of course, something like this, at some point, we need as well to show the impact. So we will work with people who join as well to kind of identify some indicator that can help us measure the impact of this. It could be, the number of resolver that has validation activated, or what we will look at them. And then at the end, try to map those best practices to ICANN DNS policy function as well. So that is the provisioning side of the domain name, addressing the registrar, registrant aspect of all of this, because they have other aspects that are not really linked to the core of the DNS operation, but which can have an impact as well. So the way we look at it is there is one common layer, which is the handling the operating environment, which is about service security, system security, network security, which is the kind of cross-cutting aspect for any service that you run on the internet. Those will be referenced there. Then we'll go down to, like, for the authoritative server, look at the GTLD operators, registry, and try to identify what they must do, what they should do, or what they may do. So for each of the category, we'll try to get those three things covered as much as we can. And going down to the sub-level TLD operators as well, the registrant, because there are many out there who run their own DNS for domain name that they have. They should also be able to know very quickly what to do. There will be also a session on the recursive resolver. By default, we want to focus on those who run resolver for their own either network or closed community, which means they have to be a closed resolver in that case, and what are the things that they should pay attention to. And then there are special cases of open resolver, which you can run privately, or you can run as service, and that's it. There again, you have some best practices to follow. And then some other consideration comes in, and I think that's where this audience may be interested in is all the thing related to the privacy side, DOT, DOH. Although in our resolver part, we have identified as QNAME minimization, which is about privacy, but we think that it is something that has to be taken into consideration, for instance, at the recursive level. Then we can also address any cast DNS. If you are running any cast DNS, these are the considerations you can take. But for us, the way we are seeing it now, those specific are not, fundamental upfront for running a secure DNS. I mean, privacy is an important aspect that we want to highlight. But if I'm running a general DNS, maybe my first reaction may not be to add a layer of complexity and address the privacy. But that is this kind of the discussion we would like to have with the community, in fact, and see how the program evolved to add those new evolution of the DNS as they mature and as we have more and more information on how they are being deployed. We won't just define the best practices, but our goal is also to provide a comprehensive guideline for people to implement them, but also to check as much as we can programmatically allow them to check where they fit into implementing those guidelines, how they rate themselves or their DNS services according to the best practices and the guideline that we provide. And that would be also part of the enrollment process. If you want to join and you want to be seen as leading by example, it would be good that you at least match some of those best practices defined. That's where the endorsement kind of from the community becomes important. So globally, that is the idea behind and the different elements that we have for this. This is still at the building phase. We want to be able to complete this phase and start rolling out a thing by the last quarter of this year, hopefully. The timeline is also published on the current wiki page, which is a temporary place for us as a repository for the work that is being done. So we are still, within the three first element, the identification of the operational best practices, the development of the guideline, and mostly the engagement with the community to have feedback. That's where your input and your engaging and discussing with you is something important for us. That's it. We have a mailing list as well that you can join. It's almost quiet for now, but as soon as we start having a clear overview of the content, we'll start sharing them to initiate some discussion. Thank you, and we'll be very happy to have question, comment, suggestion as from now. KINDNS info is where you can also send any question to the mailing list for the project management team. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Adiel, for sort of running through that. I hope that was useful to everyone. So as a reminder, if you could use the Zoom tool to raise your virtual hand or post a question in the chat, if that's easier. I can see Brett and then Jim both raise their hands. So Brett, do you want to come off mute first and give your comment or question?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Adiel. I think this is a really interesting initiative. And I think it will be useful. I've got a couple of comments really. One is that you obviously referred to manners at the start of your presentation, and I think hopefully as things go forward, it compares well to the manners thing. I think one of the reasons that manners has been so successful is it's had a clear focus on trying to play the case for RPKI and ensure that that's being deployed across lots of different service providers. And I think obviously routing, improving routing security, etc., has many aspects, but they've really kind of focused down on RPKI. And I think for you to be a success, you obviously mentioned lots and lots of different aspects that you could address as part of this endeavor. But I think to be a similar kind of success, you need to focus on one or two key areas as you move forward. I think the other thing that will make this, that will make or break the project as well is obviously there are other organisations doing similar things to what you're doing, both inside and outside the ICANN community, and I think it's important that you build relationships with those organisations so that you can work together. And the people who immediately spring to mind are DNS OARC, who do some of this kind of work as well, and a group in ICANN that I'm involved with, which is TLD Ops, and we'd be perfectly happy to work with you on it as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bert. I think you have raised some very important points, and I fully agree with you that RPKI has been kind of the boost of manners program lately. And if you follow manners, that originally it was focused on BCP38, right? It was get people to at least make sure that they deploy BCP38, and when RPKI become mature, they start focusing on that because it's a good complement for BCP38. And for our case as well, the tendency is to say that the DNSSEC will be the central point. You have to deploy the DNSSEC, but which aspect of the DNSSEC? Of course, for instance, right now we are kind of in a campaign of encouraging resolver operator to activate validation, because it's simple. It's not, if you are running a small DNS resolver service, there is no reason really for you not to do that, for instance. So yeah, we'll try to kind of catalyze the communication around some key element, and finding that and being right about that will be for us an important aspect. And we will be very much happy to work with anyone that has similar project. DNS OARC, as you know, ICANN is a sponsor of DNS OARC, and we have a plan to work with DNS OARC on some aspect of this. Same for the TLD Ops. Actually, I will be presenting during ICANN 71 Tech Day in the morning, trying to present this, and we will use that avenue as well as the cooperation. Thank you very much. Yeah,
Thanks, Brett. So we got a few more hands raised. So we got Jim, then Bill, then Peter. So Jim, if you want to come off mute and fire away.
Thanks, Andrew. Adiel, this sounds like a great initiative, so well done, and I wish you every success with it. I've actually got 3 questions. I hope Andrew will indulge me the time to ask them all. My first question is that you were talking about producing documents in BCPs, and some of the language you were using there is redolent of RFCs, shoulds and mays and so on. So how would you see this initiative interacting with ICANN? Are you going to produce documents that you would figuratively, sorry, ITF, that you would figuratively throw over the wall to DNSOP to publish an RFC, or are you planning to use another route to try and publish and get this information out there? The second question is, how are you going to prioritize this work? Is the intention to focus initially on the TLD operators, then maybe the registrars, and then maybe out to things like operators who perhaps operating recursive service rather than authoritative service? And my final question is, if you are going to go out to operators, how are you going to do the outreach and engagement there? Because they've always been a difficult bunch of people to try and deal with and interact with.
The simple answer for the first question is that at this point, we are not taking the RFC or the IETF routes to publish the best practice. It is a choice because, in fact, we want to take people, we don't to avoid people to have that to be afraid to go to the RFCs thing, because that's also something that we see. We want to actually use some of the good RFCs that are already there that touch on best practices or other work done in those areas, but kind of streamline them in a way that it can be easily consumed by small operators or operators that don't have the opportunity to come often to either TLD operator meeting, ITF meeting, etc. So we maybe at the end, when those best practices and those, the summarized document will be mature enough, stable enough, we can decide to go and publish them as best practice within IETF. That could happen, but that's not our first point of anchor. The second question, the advertisement and are we going to do this through the ICANN policy component, the registrar, and so on? I think they are a component of the initiative. They do offer services that are going to be touched on this, but we are trying not to flag this as something directly tied to the registrant model. We want to focus on the technical aspect of the DNS, operating the DNS. Operating the DNS is the first element. The registrant part for me is the kind of the procurement part, the way people buy the DNS and the way they do it. Of course, some registrar provide other services like authoritative service to people who register domain. Some even provide resolver service, but that is a service that they provide. It's not because they are registrar that they have to do that. So we want to focus on the core DNS and then probably use the fact that it is an ICANN initiative to talk to the registrar that also offer those services. The communication aspect will be key, and we are working internally with our communication team as well to try to define a comprehensive communication plan around this.
Great, thanks, Adiel. And I guess some of the IETF RFCs will be quite helpful in terms of giving some sort of best practice guidelines, things like RFC 8932 and such like. But I guess you'll get onto those in due course. Okay, thanks for that, and thanks, Jim. Bill is next, and I see, Bill, you put a couple of comments in the chat as well, which I guess you might refer back to if you come off mute.
Well, actually, I just had a very specific question or area that I was wondering if Adiel could discuss. Things like this they wind up striking a balance between aspirational and conformational, right? That if you've got essentially a big checklist of compliance items, there will always be a lot of pressure from the people who have commercial incentives to make sure that all of the possible items are checked. And they can do that two ways. They can either do that by implementing a lot of stuff, which is expensive, or they can do that by lobbying against the inclusion of columns in the table. And so if what we're trying to do is make things better, we don't want the table to become the set of least common denominator things that all the most highly incentivized people agree that they've already done. Can you talk a little bit about how you aim to strike the right balance with this and what the process would look like moving forward, and how new and higher and better targets would get added over time, and you know, at the same time, how you strike a balance with not adding a lot of checkbox items just because they're there and like one person thought they were a good idea. That's it.
Thank you very much, Bill. And you nail it really to the point. And to be honest, that is the challenge we want to try to fix. In one of my presentation originally, I say, yeah, if we start listing all best practices possible, maybe we can reach hundreds of them. You know, everyone has one. But really, I'm trying to look at this from a different perspective, where we can focus on the 20% that can give us 80% result. We cannot have it all. So that's why the word simplicity I mentioned. We want it to be simple. We want it to be short. To focus on those who are the most important and try to get that independently for any external quote unquote influence. And that's where my soft consensus aspect comes in, whereby we will try to get the operators in with the right messaging for the right understanding of where we want to go, what we don't want. What we don't want is to have, you know, everything in there, because we don't want to scare small operators away. We want to get people to focus on the most important. So our approach will be through, you know, dialogue, you know, engagement with operators, and making the distinction that you make from what is, you know, interesting to have, what is, could be good, to what is important and essential for everyone to have. Even if you are big, you are small, you should be doing that without additional cost, without additional important impact on the way you run your network. It will be challenging, but I hope that we will be able to, by trying to explain where we want to go, to get people to help us, you know, define that and stop talking to each. The problem in our community is that we talk to each other. We talk to each other as technical people, because all those things are fun, are interesting, you know, come from standard. But if you are not a protocol engineer, you don't follow the IETF, you don't follow the DNS work, or you don't follow all of that, you know, you don't actually get into the weed and then see the importance. So maybe having a way of explaining those things and focusing on what is important to other people, having that as a goal can help us. But, you know, any idea or any suggestion on how to fast track how we address that challenge will be welcome.
Thanks for the answer. It's a hard problem.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Bill. And last but not least on our list of questions, Peter, if you want to unmute.
Hi, Adiel. Thank you for the presentation. I'm Peter Lowe from DNS Filter. So as someone's pointed out, some of the commercial operators can be a bit tricky to get in touch with, and then they have not been a focus for a lot of this kind of things before. So I mean, a lot of the stuff that a lot of people who are talking about DNS abuse at the moment are talking mostly about like domain names and how the domains are being abused, but not actually, it doesn't really apply to the resolvers and the operators as much. So when I saw the slide that was about the mapping the best practices to the ICANN DNS policy functions, the registry, registrar, and registrant, it felt like perhaps the resolvers were maybe being left out a little bit, but it's nice to hear that you're taking the other guys into account as well. So thank you. I think one of the biggest challenges you're going to have maybe is that this is another thing to follow. So you're trying to solve the problem of there being too many things to follow, and then this is another one. It's the XKCD cartoon where the problem is there's 14 different standards. We need a new universal standard. Now there's 15 different standards. So yeah, it is a tough one to solve. I'm definitely going to be following along. I did have one question for you though, which is, are you going to be looking at policy at all? So something like the European resolver policy, which is talking about transparency and privacy and that kind of thing. Is this going to be, is it technical focus, or will that be covered as well? Thanks.
Good question, and I had thank you very much, Peter. Good question, and I had the discussion a little bit with Andrew as well originally. We are not going to focus on policy at the first stage, at the beginning, really. Again, because of the focus we want to have, we want to really, but we are creating a way as well to point people to other initiatives like the policy aspect, which address something different from the core technical operation of the DNS, which can complement this. And that is where, you know, this policy initiative can be a complementary thing. And we hope as well that what we come up with can also help inform policy in other areas. You know, even within ICANN area, there may be, you know, some outcome of the work that we do that can inspire, you know, evolution of the policy that can then be translated into all the compliance. But that's legal, you know, a little bit complex area. We want to try to strike some balance and not bring that into the core of the goal that we want to achieve. So policy, yes, will be there, but not part of, at least not at this stage, part of the core of the work that we want.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks everyone for your questions. I'll draw a halt there because I'm just watching the clock, but I'll put in the chat a plug for the ICANN DNS Symposium, which starts tomorrow. Runs through to Thursday, and I will shamelessly highlight that on Wednesday we have I think a kindness panel, which I heartily recommend being completely neutral, apart from the fact I'll be on it. So talking about the European resolver policy, along with Adiel and others. So I'm sure that will be an interesting discussion. And hopefully many of you are already registered for the DNS Symposium. If not, you can use the link in the chat to register. There's still time. It doesn't cost anything other than your time. And there's some interesting topics throughout the 3 days that'll be worth your attention if you can spare it. So with that,
yeah, thank you, Andrew, for that. In fact, the panel is touch on a little bit of what the question. It's in fact a group of best practice or people who are trying to promote best practices, because we will be with FIRST, we will be with some law abuse community group. So, you know, kind of building some dynamic around this thing. So yeah, and thank you for joining as well, Andrew.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, well, thank you for that. And also in the chat, you'll see a reference to the kindness mailing list, which Bill's helpfully referenced on there.
Are you already going?
Let me just mute that. Yeah. So it's the kindness discuss request at ICANN.org. You'll see Bill's put the email in the chat for the subscription address for the mailing list, which is well worth joining. So thank you, Adiel. We will move on. You're welcome to stay on the call or not if you have other pressing engagements, but we'll pick up on a few other items now. But very useful presentation, and I commend everyone to look offline to the bit more detail on kindness, which is going to be an interesting initiative, which I'm sure will develop and grow over the coming months.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Right, so let's move on then. A few things I wanted to highlight. Firstly, IGF 2021, the annual Internet Governance Forum event, scheduled to run from early December for a week. At this stage is intended to be held in person in Katowice in Poland. So is currently due to go ahead as an actual event, although it'll be a hybrid event, I think is the plan. Sort of this time around for obvious reasons. I just wanted to highlight, in case you weren't aware, that proposals for workshops have to be in by midnight UTC time, so 23:59 UTC, this Wednesday, the 26th. So if anyone has any ambitions to put forward proposals for workshops, you've got till midnight on Wednesday UTC time to put those in. I will put also in the chat a link to the relevant form that you can put proposals in on. There's additional background material, but that's the key thing to be aware of if you have an intent to sort of put forward a proposal. And then the second thing I'll put in the chat is just a more general link to these IGF sort of information more generally. So worth a look if you're planning to put anything in. So next topic, just sort of moving on. Just pick up a discussion I was having earlier today. There's a draft Wikipedia entry on public recursive name servers, which seems to be going through some challenge, I think, in terms of with the sort of the editorial process, content-wise. So again, I'll put a link in the chat to the relevant page. Those of you that have an interest in sort of that sort of thing, I think it'd be worth a look to see what the content is that's currently on the Wikipedia page. It looks like it could do with being developed somewhat, not least of which to expand the number of protocols it mentions, because it talks about DOT and DO and DNS Crypt. Doesn't currently mention DNS over quick in the table, and it probably doesn't have as comprehensive a list of the quote notable public DNS service operators. So I'm sure if you look at that, you'll think of some others that probably ought to be on there. Bearing in mind in Wikipedia parlance, when they talk about notable public DNS service operators, that has a particular meaning. So it's not going to list every single service operator, but I think there are definitely some potentially obvious omissions. So would be worth your while if you have the opportunity to have a look at that, and if you're familiar with how Wikipedia works, to potentially put forward some edits to make that a more useful and comprehensive list. And then just two other things briefly from me. One is a reminder, we don't have a call this time next Monday because it's a public holiday in the UK and the US, a different public holiday, but we both have one. So I thought we would just take a break this one day. But in 2 weeks' time, the 7th of June, Vinnie Parler from Cisco is going to be joining us to talk about their public name server. private name server even proposal. So in the email with the sort of information on the talk for today, I put a link to the relevant Cisco paper, which is worth a look. So just to repeat, no call this time next week, but 2 weeks time, Vinny will join us to talk about private name servers, which I think will certainly be of interest as a topic. So that's probably more than enough from me. Is there anything that anyone else wishes to raise, or any comments on any of what I've just briefly touched on? Anyone wants to come in on with? Give you a moment to jump on if you wish to.
This is Bill again. I had discussed with Andrew the thing on Wikipedia. This web page started out as a comprehensive list of all sort of globally anycast public resolvers, and a table comparing what protocols they supported and so forth. And it was pretty useful for the research community at that time. And then like random Wikipedia editor folks started wading in and making arbitrary decisions about what columns should be there and what rows should be there and so forth, without any reference to, you know, technical reasons, so forth. And my initial take on the matter was that that was vandalism and that the list needed to be complete. And then the amount of bureaucratic insanity around a Wikipedia page that Wikipedia volunteer editors have converged on. I don't know, one of them pointed out as a counterexample, said, well, we wouldn't want it to be like this, would we? And then pointed out another page that actually is quite a comprehensive list of 275. Well, if there's a really comprehensive one out there, maybe we should focus on that one instead. So I don't know, which I honestly feel so annoyed about the whole thing that I'm not a good person to be making any giving any reasonable advice about what should happen. But either that page needs to be cleaned up if people are going to depend on it, or we need to make really clear that that page is not the canonical reference, and either this one that somebody found or something at DNSOArc or whatever, because researchers need this so that they don't all have to walk the entire IP address space looking for open resolvers when they are trying to figure out what does what. And we do not want more researchers walking the entire address space testing for open resolvers. Got enough of those already.
Yep. So anyone got any thoughts on that? Give you a chance to maybe sort of sleep on it, but I think ideas welcome on how best to tackle that when you've had a chance to look at the page. Thanks, Bill. I see also that whilst we're sharing, Peter even shared quite a topical link, a tweet even with an interesting quote, going back to the KINDNS presentation. So I just cut and pasted the quote, which is part of the link, which is, there are 297 RSCs relevant to DNS, which maybe helps understand why something like KINDNS might be quite useful to signpost the most relevant stuff to someone that's perhaps not spending their entire working life on this stuff. Some sort of guide to it could be quite useful, because that's a lot of RSCs to read and try and make head or tail of, which I wouldn't envy someone having to do that. Right, we are just out of time. So any last comments from anyone? I'll take that as not, in which case, have a fantastic week, everyone, and we'll speak again in 2 weeks' time. So talk to you all then. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.